For a long time, the San Francisco Giants were in control of one of the wild card spots. Playing the worst baseball they've played since 1901 erased that. What do we look for in the last 24 games of the 2025 season? Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Soder Report. My name is Kyle Soder. On this show, we're going to talk a little bit about the San Francisco Giants and what we should possibly be excited for as fans after they turned into a dumpster fire right when they were in the middle of a postseason race. But first, before we get into that, we are brought to you by Elite Cacao Supplements. Head on over to www.elitecacao.com to get your focus supplements today. So, that being said, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter video today. I'm on kid duty right now, so I got to get back to watching the boy. But I just wanted to come on here for about 15 minutes and talk about my thoughts on the San Francisco Giants. The last time I was here, the San Francisco Giants had started to scuffle a little bit. I called into question Bob Melvin's job security. I said last time that I have some serious doubts about if he should be back next year. And I still have those doubts. When it mattered most, the San Francisco Giants were not ready to play. And that does not bode well for if they ever get into the postseason. With Bruce Bochy's Giants, when the moment mattered most, the San Francisco Giants were ready to play. Bochy managed the bullpen flawlessly. He managed the defense flawlessly. He managed the lineups flawlessly. And he's got 4 World Series rings in his life to show for it as a manager. Bob Melvin has 0. He's managed a ton of games throughout his career as a manager, and yet he has 0 World Series rings. So this isn't gonna be a Bob Melvin show. But it's definitely worth calling his job security into question as the San Francisco Giants crumbled when it mattered most. This show is going to be about what we as fans should be watching for in the last 24 games, what still matters going into the 2026 season. Now, I've been pretty consistent with this. I said for a long time, year 1 of the Buster Posey regime, inheriting one of the worst farm systems in baseball, inheriting a roster that was average everywhere and special nowhere. It was going to be tough for him to get into the postseason in year 1, and it wasn't a reasonable expectation. However, I said in 2025 I wanted to see progression in the organization. And I didn't want to see moves made for 2025. So as the trade deadline approached, I said that I didn't want any rentals on this team. I did not want to give up prospects for a Eugenio Suarez or a Josh Naylor. And they didn't, to their credit. They actually gave up Rogers, they gave up Duvall, and they gave up Yastrzemski for prospects that would help them in the future. And their farm system jumped from 28th to 18th this year. That's progression. On the Major League field, they went out and traded for Rafael Devers, who is under team control for a long time. The next 8 years, I believe. So that is progression. That's not a move for 2025. That's a move that's going to make them better for a long time. Willy Adames, same thing. So I overall, even though the Giants are more than likely going to miss the postseason in 2025, I'm very satisfied with what this team has done to get them into a spot where they have a chance to compete in 2026. And I wouldn't say that they're a World Series contender in 2026. They would need to make a lot of moves, and I don't anticipate that happening. But it should be a reasonable expectation for the San Francisco Giants to make the playoffs in 2026. But there are a couple of things that need to happen first. I said in my last video that if the Giants can just find a guy who can hit leadoff, then that would make their 2 through 6 hitters next year more than likely Heliot Ramos at 2, Devers at 3, Adames at 4, Eldridge at 5, and Chapman at 6. And to me, that's a pretty good middle of the order. So they have a couple of in-house options that they're trying out for that leadoff. Well, they're not necessarily trying them out for the leadoff spot, but they profile as players who could fit in a leadoff spot. And obviously the most ideal option would be Jung-Hoo Lee. Now, Bob Melvin hasn't hit Jung-Hoo Lee in the leadoff spot. I would prefer to see Jung-Hoo Lee hit leadoff every single day going into going up to the end of the season. Let me just pull up Jung-Hoo Lee's stats really quick. I talked a lot about Jung-Hoo Lee a bit earlier in the season. He was having a major slump earlier, and a lot of people were wondering if his contract was worth it. And my whole thing was Jung-Hoo Lee is a brand new player. He has a lot to learn. This is pretty much his rookie season. And in the offseason when people were putting out the projections of him hitting 290 or something like that, that just wasn't it wasn't a fair expectation. So I have his stats pulled up here. I said that I wanted to see something pretty similar to what 2024 was, and as you can see, he's right around that. He hit 262 in 2024, 259 so far in 2025. You would hope that would have taken a little bit of a step up to 265 or so. But overall, next season is the one where we should be watching for a jump from Jung-Hoo Lee. You would definitely like to see more stolen bases out of Jung-Hoo Lee. He's a fast runner. It just doesn't seem like he knows how to slide to avoid a tag. It doesn't seem like he's super aggressive when it comes to stealing bases. It just doesn't seem like he's comfortable stealing bases. So you would definitely like a leadoff hitter to be comfortable stealing bases and hitting for a higher average. But this is a guy that's still developing. He's got a lot of baseball career left at the major league level. He's proven to be a capable defender, and I'm interested in what he can bring as a player in the future, but I don't know if I want to rely on Jung-Hoo Lee as a leadoff hitter next year. Now, something that I wanted to bring up last time was Ha-Seong Kim. So as you can see, 2024, Jung-Hoo Lee's first year, age 25. Ha-Seong Kim, 2021, his first year, he was age 25. He hit 202 with a 270 on base percentage, 352 slugging, 622 OPS. Compare that to Jung-Hoo Lee. Jung-Hoo Lee hit 262, 310, 331, 641 OPS. So a higher batting average. Really just better across the board in the rookie year. And then I really count 2025 as a rookie year. So over his career, which is just barely over 162 games now, he's hitting 260, 320, 387, and 707. So a little bit more power this year than his rookie year. In Ha-Seong Kim's second year, his batting average went up 49 points to 251, 325 on base percentage, 383 slugging, 708 OPS. In his third year, it went up to 260 batting average, 351 on base percentage, 398 slugging, and 749 OPS. And as you can see, the home runs, he hit 8 his first year in 117 games, 11 his second year in 150 games, and 17 his third year in 152 games. And then he dealt with injuries No, he didn't deal with I thought he was dealing with injuries in 2024. I'd have to double check that. But Ha-Seong Kim is another guy who came over from the KBO. And I would honestly expect Jung-Hoo Lee's career to look something like Ha-Seong Kim's career has, where he starts out a little slow, and over time he develops into a player that is an asset on a team. So, in summary, I like Jung-Hoo Lee. I don't think that he's not worth the contract. I think that he is going to be a good player one day. However, I don't want to rely on him to be that leadoff table setter hitter that the Giants need in 2026. I would be more comfortable with him hitting 7th or 8th or something like that. So, the next person that could possibly take that leadoff role is a guy who I've been very high on, and that is Luis Matos. I've proclaimed myself president of his fan club, and I think he's got all the tools to be a guy who can hit 300 and be excuse me one second here. I think he's got all of the skills in the world to be a guy who can hit 300. I think he can be an all-star one day. And up to this point, the Giants haven't given him the run that I would have wanted them to. I would have preferred him to play over Mike Yastrzemski just because Matos has a much higher ceiling. They didn't want to go that route, and it doesn't really seem like most of Matos' time going to and from the big leagues back to AAA, it doesn't really seem like the Giants have believed in him that much. And if that was the case, then, well, the Giants should have traded him for a proven bat. He had a lot of trade value at one point. He was a top 100 prospect. However, the Giants just completely deflated his value. But in this latest stint he's had since being called back up from AAA, he's been on fire. He's raised his average from 178 to 232. And he's just been incredible with the bat. Now, we've seen this before where he goes through a hot streak, and then he goes cold, and then he gets sent down. My issue with that is you need to find out if these guys can get out of slumps at the big league level. But he's just been incredible since getting back. Now, do I think that would I be comfortable with Luis Matos being the leadoff hitter on the 2026 team? As president and king of his fan club, I regrettably have to say no. We saw a bigger sample size with Tyler Fitzgerald last year, and he hasn't been the same player. He hasn't lived up to those expectations that he set. Last year, Tyler Fitzgerald had his big month in July, his big Barry Bonds month. That was July. And Matos, he's been great for the past couple of weeks, but that started in mid-August. And to me, that's just not enough to completely hand over the keys to Luis Matos in right field. But I do want to just take a little bit of a victory lap here. Let's look at Luis Matos' stats here. He's played 50 games this year. He's hit 232, 269 on base, 464 slugging, 733 OPS. He's hit 8 home runs. He's struck out 24 times. Again in 50 games, 151 at-bats. You see where I'm going with this? So, Mike Yastrzemski with the Giants this year hit 231, 330 on base percentage, 355 slugging, 685 OPS. He hit 8 home runs, same as Luis Matos. He struck out 86 times in 97 games. So Matos has given you the same average, not quite as good of an on-base percentage, a better slugging percentage, a better OPS, and just as many home runs in the exact same amount of games as Mike Yastrzemski. So, I told you so. He's got a much higher ceiling than Mike Yastrzemski. He might not be playing defense as well as Mike Yastrzemski did in his prime. I think this year Yastrzemski's defense took a downturn, and they've been comparable defensively. I would need to dive in deeper to the defensive metrics, but offensively, Luis Matos in his 50 games has been more productive than Mike Yastrzemski. So, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to hang that take from the banners here, and that's my little victory lap that I'm going to take. So, there's a few more players to watch, one of which is Drew Gilbert. The thing about him is he has control. So, he can be optioned next year. He can be optioned the year after. He's going to be around for a while. And you might even look at him as a guy who can take over for Jung-Hoo Lee if he doesn't really live up to his contract. He can take over for him. If Jung-Hoo Lee decides to opt out after having a couple of great years, he could be a guy that can take over. But that's an interesting guy to watch for the rest of the year. He went 4 for 4 yesterday against the Colorado Rockies. So that was really great to see. And then the last thing is the young pitching. I personally feel like you don't need to see as much out of young pitching in order to decide whether or not they can be a part of your roster next year. So I talked about the 3 outfielders, Matos, Lee, and Gilbert. None of them are probably going to step into a starting role for next season. I feel like if a young pitcher emerged now, then they could. The way I see the pitching staff shaping up for 2026, it's going to be Webb and Ray at the top. And then I've always advocated for going out and getting another guy who can be your 3 starter. And then rolling with Roop. And then whoever wins a job out of Birdsong, Wizenhunt, Seymour, Kaiwei Tang. Those are I do not have the same opinion of those 4, just by the way. I think I mentioned Birdsong already. But if one of those guys emerges in his last 5 starts, then you can take a chance on him being your 5th starter. And if he's not good enough to be your 5th starter, that's probably not a spot where you're expecting a lot of production anyway. But that's a spot you can shore up either midway through the season with a free agent signing. There's usually a couple pitchers available, or low cost, low risk trade at the trade deadline. So if there is a young pitcher that emerges, I would be okay with rolling with him as the 5 next year. But in order for a young pitcher to establish himself and be the 3, I don't know if that's enough time. If 24 games is enough time for that. So, like I said, this is going to be a shorter one. Thank you very much for tuning in. Watch the rest of the year. See what you think. Please comment down below what you think of my thoughts today. Am I an idiot for continuing to bring up Mike Yastrzemski compared to Luis Matos? What do you think of Jung-Hoo Lee's contract? Is it a good contract? Is he going to live up to it in the future? Let me know what you think. Hope you all have a nice rest of your day.